Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. First of all, I would like to thank you for being here. I'm so proud to be in this conversation with you all. And the She's Tech is so proud to have you here. Um, First, I would like to explain what She's Tech is. She's Tech is a project, a community, and a collaborative platform aimed at strengthening the family presence in the tech sector through three pillars: inspiring, engaging, and empowering. We act to promote events to increase our representation and to create network of connections and support. We also work for awareness of the market about diversity and inclusion, and we stimulate self-acceleration. Then, in 3 years and a half, we had more than 200 hours of content and 3,000 people attending our events, and more than 100,000 impacted. We believe that partnerships with other women's communities and projects like Campus Party and university acceleration programs, colleagues, government, were and are essential to build the She Stack. And men are welcome. We support the UN campaign, We for She, and we call them to build a new world together. She's Tech, nowadays, we do the biggest event for women in tech in Brazil. And it's a pleasure to be here in Campus Party Digital Edition and to bring this thing that is very important today. We will talk about data and manipulation. And I want to call Aline to start this conversation. And I want to say, first of all, uh, thank you, Lynn Langet, Caroline Dantas, Paula Figueiredo, and Aline Oliveira for being here. Okay? And Aline, please, I want to invite you to start this conversation. I'm very excited about it.
Sure, Ciranda. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And yeah, there is an echo, right, from my voice. Yeah. So if you guys can mute the phone, that would be better. Just making sure. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. So thank you so much, Ciranda. Congratulations for making this happen, and I'm so proud with each one of us here in this panel today. And the topic today is about data and mass manipulation. So we are living in a time that people are, social data, companies are manipulating us from our data, and we are giving our data for them for free, and not for free, of course, but we are giving to them voluntarily. And so there is a lot of discussions going on about that. The movie, this great documentary movie that really impacted my life last year, it calls The Great Hack, and some other TED talks before this movie also made me really think about, a lot about it, and all those things that are going on in our lives, in our bubbles, in our social network, and in our mind. So in a nutshell, those companies and government and hackers and a lot of good people and bad people out there are having too much information about us, uh, information enough to manipulate us. So that's the reality. We are living, we can't negate that anymore. This is happening and it's already proven, right? And we are talking about much more than 5,000 data points about each one of us individual on Earth. We're probably talking today, 2020. Lynn probably knows better about this, but we're talking about 30,000 data points, or even in the future for our next generation, it will be 70,000 data points about each one of us. And we're talking about what we hate, what we like, what we dislike, um, what we fear, what we do when we wake up, like all kinds of very subject and personal information about ourselves. They have that as data point. Specifically, companies are out there specifically to manipulate us, and they are selling that to governments, to politicians, to other companies. And so we just want to address here in this panel, with these great women in front of us here, we want to address some specific, important, very important points of that. Um, COVID, Black Lives Matter, and 2020 US elections, or next elections in general, right? How are we how are we being manipulated right now on this pandemic? How are we manipulating right now on the Black Lives Matter situation and the new elections? How our data are influencing decisions, our all behaviors. And we know we don't have answers, but we will love to discuss how can we protect ourselves, how we can control all that. We and governments and national international organizations or whoever needs to control all that. So how can we together, as individual or as organizations, how can we control that? How can we stop um, bad fake news? How can we move on? How it's going to be our future and the future of the next generations? So I guess it's just a little bit of this huge topic, and I think I made clear what we want to just touch points here, and how we can start this huge discussion, endless and maybe answersless discussion from now on. So that's it, Ciranda. We go from there. You mute.
Your microphone.
Oh my God. Yes, yes. I think to continue, I would like to address a question to Paula. How can we tackle data usage users in mass manipulation, since technology faces no boards of government?
Excellent question, Ciranda. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity of being here with you. This is really a lifetime opportunity to be addressing the whole world. It's an important discussion. It's a great pleasure for me, and I really hope to bring some important questions out. And I think this is the main and great one. I think the movie brought to the general public the knowledge of what happens when we put data, uh, media, instruments of media communication alongside with knowledge of psychology that can trigger people to believe in something or to take some measures that they wouldn't otherwise. And now we are aware of this, or the general public, which is not, has no knowledge of how this goes in technology and behind the scenes, already knows now that this is possible and this is being carried out by companies or governments. And how do we tackle this, considering that laws, they work in countries, specific countries, and technology faces no borders? how do we do this? Because if in one hand, we profit a lot from having a bigger communication, and we're gonna touch this subjects in a while with our guests. We profit a lot from this possibility of having global communications really fast and really reachable to the majority of people. But how is this being used? Who are we listening to? Who should we be listening to? And how do we handle something that faces no borders, since law, which is something that we could impose to companies or governments or even people, it only works inside the countries. We have to do this together internationally, globally. We need to be asking ourselves, what do we want technology to do for us? And how are we going to go through this childhood and teenagerhood of technology today with the least impacts or the negative impacts of the technology now? And we have two main topics here that have a big impact on data collection, on data spreading, that we could talk about to illustrate how the phenomenon in social media and in media in general is happening now, and how this could affect our lives and our decisions related to our governments in the near future, for instance. So I would ask Lynn to share with us her impressions on COVID-19 and data. How has it affected your life? So if you could please share your impressions with us. I mean,
thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to speak on this important panel. I really feel honored to be part of such an esteemed group. Thank you. As you can tell by my accent, I am not Brazilian. I am an American. And so I have that perspective. I also have the perspective of somebody who had COVID, but not validated, because I had all the symptoms of it. I actually went to the hospital, was quite ill for about 4 weeks. But at the time I had it, there were no tests available in where I live in the United States. In my work as a software professional, I work with the cloud and I'm a programmer. I actually work with bioinformatics researchers. So I have a unique perspective because of this work, which was more around cancer research before COVID. I had scientific information. I mean, I'm not a geneticist, but I work with people who are. And so for COVID, I was quite fortunate in that I had an alternative source, a more accurate source of information. Generally, I don't get information that is important to me from social media. So that's a general sort of thing. I'm sure the audience is listening. I'm a data professional. I have been for many, many years, 15, 20 years. I generally do not get any news from Twitter, from Facebook. I just don't, because it's too much trouble to validate where that came from. In the case of COVID, I got my news from scientific papers. And just a frame for this is, because I'm not a scientist, how would I read them? Well, fortunately, there are people. There's a doctor, an epidemiologist in Britain, who has a very, very popular YouTube channel, Dr. John, who started in the beginning, before it was even a pandemic, to interpret the scientific papers. So taking the time to look at the quality of the information, kind of think of it like food for your mind, you know? You wouldn't want to eat a rotten fruit, and you're going to Twitter, you're getting a rotten news, right? And so it turned out to be quite important for me, because not only was I unable to get a COVID test because my country didn't take the information seriously, I also was unable to get treatment. And so had I not had access to high quality treatment about how to deal with inflammation and how to change my diet and how to change my life for it, you know, I could have died. You know, I have high blood pressure. So it was like pretty critical in my case. So I don't know if that's what you're exactly looking for, but that was like my experience with COVID. Also, interestingly, I actually work with clients who have converted their labs from cancer research to COVID testing. So that was quite interesting because, again, our government basically denied the importance of it, and the private sector stepped up and created COVID tests. And I was really quite proud to be part of that effort, which, for example, in Massachusetts, they made a model to test in old people homes and really spared a lot of people their life.
It's impressive, and this shows how much we are receiving information, and we are unable now to swim through the sea of information that we've been bombarded with. And it's very, very hard to have a good curatorship of the information, to know how to drive, how to get to the right information, and how this could actually cost lives, right? And I would also like to ask you about the movement Black Lives Matters, because you're talking from
Minneapolis. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm originally from this part of the United States. I had been living in California, but last year I moved back here to be closer to my mother. And I'm old enough that I actually lived through the riots in California many years ago around Rodney King. And so when George Floyd was tragically murdered, I unfortunately anticipated that we would have a problem. What has been interesting for me coming back to the Midwest is because of, I guess, the manipulation of data, I was really unaware of the racial inequity in my city. And I'll just be honest, I am in a tech bubble. I am in a privileged position because of my job. And so I live in a part of Minneapolis that's a lot of tech people, where there's a decent amount of integration because everybody's in that tech bubble. They're rich, basically. But I didn't see the rest of the city until this event occurred. And I have been trying to educate myself, and it takes effort. It's not obvious. Again, it's sort of like with the COVID problem. The information I need about, for example, the systemic aggression in our police department, you can't just find that. You have to go and research it to find out about the incidents and to find out about what actions have been attempted. And again, I keep likening this to food, because I think everybody understands that. It's sort of like we have an obligation to eat properly, or we're going to, be unhealthy. And I think sort of the new thinking around data, at least for me, is I have to feed my brain the high quality data. I really, really cannot emphasize, as a person working in data, how it's just going to be really helpful if you do not consider social media any source of authoritative news at all. I spend a lot of time trying to help people understand that. Do not get your news, even if it has a verified by or whatever, just no. It's just not going to help you. It's like eating junk food over and over.
And this is happening with us all over, all of the time, regardless our positions of privilege and knowledge. I would like now to ask Caroline. We had a trigger, a very sad trigger that ignited the Black Lives Matter movement. It shows the impact of and the transformation power in communication, and also this response to triggers that we could see in the movie The Great Hack. We had like a global chain after what happened in Minneapolis. And we had to face an old problem that is sadly very present, but very real. And we could see both things happening. At least I was able to identify two things. People talking against some kind of behavior that is not acceptable anymore, but also many intolerance and this brings out the question, is this movement facing some kind of restrictions or alterations? Uh, is Black Lives Matter suffering some manipulation? Do you think this movement will impact on our elections, not only here in Brazil, but also abroad? Could you share with us a little from your impression?
Thanks for invitation. Thanks for this movement. So first, the Black Lives Matters began in 2013. So when I started and then run in the United States, people don't agree with their reasons or problem that is appointed. So it's really different now. The position to Black Lives Matters in the United States, because in 2016 we had the Trump's election, but people moved to voted because the Black Lives Matters movement, because go to streets to think, to show people the problems to elected Trump. Don't work, but uh, started a grand movement. So the George Floyd, it's a stopping for in 2020 in this election will tend the form to will be see the elections in the United States and the whole world. I think because I had some some notes about it, and right in June 10th, the New York Times had a news about it, and it's information, a really good information about it. 76% of Americans consider racism a big problem. It's up 26 points and the 26 the year Trump's was election. So it's really nice see this movement up the streets and up people to think about the racism problem, the poor problem, and COVID. The problem about COVID in the data, it's big too, because have a problem and see the people make uh, make the good data about it. So um, people of color, it's most impacted for this type of problem. So racism, so COVID, it's a big problem together in 1 year, and it's really nice see the white people thinks together with us in this movement. And no, no, was not only in the United States but in Brazil too, had a strong movement about it and inspired, and United States too, but here had a good movement. uh, Marielle, yes, it's a good example about the data, about people um, against to racism, against injustice. So I think the elections will be different at all.
We hope so, right? We It's really difficult to imagine that people having access to data, they wouldn't reflect over this. But we still have this situation that Lynn was talking about. How can we understand and go for the sources? Who can we trust? Who are we listening to, and who should we be listening to? Those are things that are not clear to the majority of people, regardless of them being highly educated or being privileged enough to have access to information. And now the shifting for the legal scene. I'm a lawyer here in Brazil. Let's share some impressions on how could law assist this? How could we tackle this? And why should we looking into data protection and data the most careful way we could? The whole world is now paying attention to data protection, to personal data protection. We have over 180 countries that already issued their laws, their bills about this, or they are in the pre-state of having these laws being enforced. Brazil is one of them. My procedures already mentioned, Aline mentioned, that we are giving our data away and this data is being used to manipulate information or to modify how information comes to us and what information comes to us. The data protection system aims to give people back the usage of the transparency and the ownership of their own data. But is it enough? It's very, 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 very necessary. We know that nowadays our lives are being highly exposed, but is it enough? How do we tackle the situation with fake news that provenly by the movie has been able to modify elections in very, very big countries? Here in Brazil, we're now under the discussion of a fake news bill, which is very, very delicate because it touches the subject on a way that might not be effective from the perspective that it looks into the users of networks and social media communication to be punished by spreading fake news instead of looking into maybe the direction that should be sought is looking into the producers and the finance and the people or organizations behind the money that finances such things. And we see very, very complicated situations here. For instance, big traditional media that are now of knowledge of the whole population, and you get fake websites with tiny differences on the website, such as a small dot or something that could easily mislead somebody who's reading that news website thinking that they're accessing a big newspaper website. We have many examples like this, but are we actually not promoting something to make this problem even bigger if we're not looking into the people or the organizations behind financing such situations? Should we actually move this to the perspective of the people using social media and networks in general? How can we tackle, how can we address this? And those are not easy questions. And mainly, I don't believe those questions are going to be answered by law alone. We really, really need to do this alongside with people from many different areas, especially technology, the knowledge that Lynn brings to us, Aline, Ciranda, and Caroline as well. We need to bring different perspectives to be looking at what can we do technologically. And this is actually something that we would like to propose. What can we do? How can we promote the voices that should be heard, like we saw now with many movements being Black Lives Matters, one of them? How can we make sure that this information is actually getting to people and not being stopped? Because we know that algorithms now can search and promote specific information and not promote some. How can we do this? So this is a big invitation for everybody that's listening to us, especially inside a tech event that has this transformation power. We need to do this together. And this is our invitation for you. Be thinking of how can we have technology assisting us in the communication that we have the right to do? How can we check our data? How can we check our facts? How can we have transparency, neutrality, being neutral in our networks? This is something that we should be looking into. We should be protecting our privacy, but we should be opening our voices, and we should be using this very powerful tool to communicate. And we need your input, everybody who's listening to us, to help mankind get
I
that.
I would love to hear Lynn's opinion about that, because we are in this situation in Brazil, and I would love to hear your vision from USA.
Sure, thank you. So in the large data pipelines that I work with a lot of machine learning. And of course, when you talk about algorithms, it's generally machine learning, not always, but there are now starting to be tools that can help people who are not technical to understand the bias in the machine learning data and machine learning algorithm. Actually, surprisingly, Google has led the way on this. And there are a number of tools that are already available. If you just look on machine learning fairness, that I have shared with subject matter experts and business owners and non-technical people, so that they can understand, they can now see in to the algorithm. So from a legal point, sort of to me, the logical extension to that would be to use these tools, to understand these tools, to invite technical people that are watching to create some of these tools, but then to share them with the legal community so that they could be used as standards of proof. Because of course, the problem, as I see it, my brother's a judge, so I have a little bit of understanding of the legal side too. We sit and talk about this, is that non-technical people need the math of the algorithms explained in a way that they can understand, because the math behind the algorithms is not something that the general population is going to ever know. So you need a picture, basically, and that's as a tool. So you need to have like a visual of like, where is the bias in the data? And particularly in Google's most powerful algorithm, it's a distributed machine learning, so you can use a lot of data. It's called TensorFlow. They've really done a lot of work around tools for TensorFlow that as a model, I think, for the industry around bias in data and bias in algorithms. So I'd like to, again, ask our audience, if considering it's a technical audience, to use those tools and then create versions of those tools and then share them with the different communities, whether it's the journalism community or the legal community.
Excellent, excellent, Lynn. I would like to ask Aline to share her impressions on this, and then Carolina too.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Yeah, I think we are so right, and we are so well informed here. And Lynn was so able to, summarize the points that we need to care about our all information. I don't think it's fair, but that's our reality right now. I'd like to add one point that so social media are really new thing, right? It's such something so recent, like a decade or more, and it came to connect us, right? That was the very first objective of social media, is to connect people, mainly friends, and stay together and talk together, and be a channel that we can reach out to each other, and we can find old friends and everything. So that was the very first thing. Then it changed to a second moment that, okay, that's actually so rich, right? It contains so many people's behavior that we can actually make money with it. And then it's still fine, it's still okay that they can mine our information, our behaviors, our data, and what we talk, how we talk about ourselves, and then so they start selling it to companies, and companies can address us and target us in a more relevant way. And I still, myself personally, I still think that was okay, right? So they won't be, annoying me with things that I don't want. They will be more target. But then when it's the third phase, then they start manipulating in such a high level, and mass manipulation, and use that as a weapon that are killing people in Caribbean. Countries are using those data and buying data from the same companies to kill races and to kill whole, mass of people, like genocide. That is happening. That did happen in Caribbean, and can happen in Brazil. We know that, and can happen in many many places. And that's when they became evil, right? And they know that. So Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, or whoever, all the investors on Facebook and all these other social media, they realize that some, at least a few of them, start realizing that they create monsters at the end, right? Not in the beginning, but at the end, they became monsters, and mass manipulation weapon and genocide weapons. So they more, so you talk about, Paula, the sources of the problem are they also, and the organization that finance all these problems, right? So at the end, the problem is these evil people that would like to pay to kill people. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is they are the media. They are the the platform that these bad people use. So Google is realizing, like Lin Langate said, Facebook also realizing, investors of those companies are realizing, at least a few of them, that if they don't change really drastically, that we, the people, will change. It, so they also need to change together with the population, and because they have to stop it themselves. Like, so that's a third phase of this movement. I can see like that, and it's coming, and we are right now in this situation, and we don't know how the future will be. We just, hope that will be better. But we are right now in the situation that this big realization of the monster we create from a thing that's supposed to be to connect people, and are disconnecting and polarizing us right now.
Thank you so much, Aline. And you see the power of what you just said is very, very important for us to highlight. Should we acknowledge us as users that the power actually is in our hands for a lot of things, and we need to use it. So if we position ourselves in a situation that we're not going to use some kind of service, platform, or company because we do not agree with what's going on in their policies or behavior, this hurts the pocket and normally causes a reaction. This is happening now in Brazil, that we are uncovering many, many, many massive content, fake news websites and companies. So yeah, this is one of the ways to make it work. Caroline, you would
Oh
like
yeah.
to share your ideas with us on this?
Yeah, I had two points about it. The first, it's about understand bias and behavior. It's constructed. Neuroscience understand it, but about a bias and cognitive bias, and this is a form to we construct the data, the models, and machine learning. Um, and it's in the because with um this bias in your brain, so it's important to understand this bias and the labels that people put in us, it's really important to understand when construct the world and the data world, because the data world is a form to bring real world to the machines. So it's important to understand in the real world and the machine world. And I saw a documentary. The Disclosure is the name in the Netflix, and really, it's really nice this documentary, because about the behaviors, the bias, and the labels to media put in the minority people. So LGBT, trans people, people of color. So this this label that media put in us, it's a form to we can bring to machine learn too. So, and discrimination is continue. So it's important understand this bias too. It's my opinion.
Excellent and highly important. There is one specific case that we discuss in law very much, which is one algorithm that was used in the United States to calculate the probability of somebody who committed a crime to do it again. And this has a big impact on how this person would be sentenced or progress from one part of the sentencing to another. And it was noticed that people of color were being convicted more than white people. And we discussed, where is the problem? Is it within the algorithm itself, or is it within the information that the algorithm that came out with this output? And more importantly, how can we fix this? Because we actually would profit a lot from using technological tools in every area of our knowledge. And sometimes the machine can also be have less than of bias than men and women. So how can we tackle this? How can we use this? Because you can't just, Lynn might be able to tell us more about this, but you can't just, touch the algorithm and get a part of it and say, don't look at it, because you're going to alter everything that comes with the output. But we need to be looking into this. And we have now the opportunity to know much more of our behavior and knowledge than we did before. I don't think this kind of biases were that clear or being looked into in details such as we can now. So we do have very positive outcomes, but what do we do with the negative ones? Right, Lynn?
Yeah, so I have a couple things to say about that, because again, it's been in our news lately. So this is a big story that's been in our news around machine learning algorithms for facial recognition from the cloud vendors. So Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, they were being used by police forces. So kind of similar to the sentencing. And basically they weren't of enough quality. They were not better than people. They were worse. And they had more bias in them. It's actually more detailed than this, but to kind of summarize it, they were not using a high quality variety data set. They're using too many white people. And so when it was a person who wasn't white, they were identifying the wrong person. And that was, perpetuating, wrong arrests and police aggression and that kind of stuff. And so within Google, there was an employee protest over this, because it was also being used for immigration, for ICE. Employees didn't want to work on it. Amazon came out and said, yeah, we have similar bias problem. And so what happened is they just stopped using it. So one situation with these algorithms is if they're not of better quality and they need to be tested, that's the obvious thing. There needs to be a testing mechanism, kind of like we test other critical services. Like we think of like airplanes. They have to have a checklist to make sure the airplane is safe, right? So from a legal point, what I'm hoping that, we can evolve to is a standard of when is an algorithm safe, which I think would become kind of standard of it's the same or better than a group of humans, right? Because like you said, sometimes it can be better, it can have less bias, but we have to test that, right? And then build that into our law. So if we can't build that, can't build an algorithm that's better, sometimes it's the right thing to do to turn it off. And that's what actually happened in this case. Algorithms can be tuned, but again, it's a difficult mathematical problem and needs tools. I mean, there's this interesting project that was done in University of Irvine, California, that I think Google acquired, and it was predicting what an animal was in a photo, and it was is it a dog or is it a coyote, right? Yeah. And what they actually did with this tool is they said, no, it's not actually either. It's predicting that there's snow in the background rather than grass. And it's so cool. They go around where the algorithm on the photo is using. And of course, the people thought, well, it was going to just pick the animal because that's what a person would see, right? But an algorithm is math, it's numbers. It just sees whatever is there, right? So it was a snow predictor. It was quite a famous thing, right? But those are the kinds of things that we need. We need that translation of the math for people who don't have the time or whatever to read all that math. We need the visual tools, and then we need some standards in law that are just like the standards for other things for safety.
Yes, precisely, Lynn. What we discussed is the usage of what's called commonly a sandbox, just like the sandbox for kids. And we would have the more complete test situation that we can reproducing the best way we could the conditions and the information and the algorithms going on and working for us to understand the outcomes, because there's many situations that we cannot behind it, because it will progressively change. It's one of the ways to do those. So it is a big challenge. But once again, I would like to say that this is not something that the law will do by itself. We need to have different knowledge from all areas, especially in tech, because we need to understand what is possible and what is not. We would like to ask everybody again to be thinking of the call for action here, considering this great event where people are looking at tools of technology and entrepreneurship and innovation and the potential of transformation that we need, and be asking ourselves, what is this transformation that we need? And we need to be looking into our data and our spreading of data, and how are we going to be transparent of what's going on? How are we going to make it accessible to people to understand? Where can we get our facts checked? More on the side that we need to balance this. We're seeing a lot of imbalance, but we are the majority here. We're holders of interests. Positioning ourselves as holders of those interests, and be constructing tools for achieving what we would like to achieve is very important. And we highly believe that this is within the hands of people who are listening to us now, and could be building a lot from this event. I would like to invite all of the people here in the panel to say the words, to say the wrapping for our public, because we're reaching the final minutes of our talk. So Ciranda, could you please share with us? I think you...
Yes. I'm so happy with the discussion. I think I'm thinking here, like, mass manipulation, it's not new thing. Yes, We we were manipulated by um, radio, newspapers, TV, cinema, and we are we were susceptible to be manipulated by that, and now we are under the impression that we have full control of our medias, and we have all people producing content, and like a fake, we are feeling that we have independent information come from everywhere. Then I think now it's even harder to realize that today uh, we are manipulated, and to realize how, when, and where we are being manipulated by the social media and by everything, you know. I think we have to have this conscience uh, and um, be more afraid, not afraid, but how can I say that? Like more
Conscious,
no conscious, but
Aware.
attent. How can I say that?
aware,
Yeah,
yes.
aware
Yeah,
in a
aware.
very. Yeah, I would like to add something to Ciranda. I think it's very important what you just said, and to close up, to wrap up my side, is that yeah, we've been always manipulated since ever as a mass, right? Now you're being manipulated as individual. I think that's the big difference. They are getting to us and be able to manipulate one by one, not as a TV or a newspaper or propaganda, in the radio on, before World War, or like the our ancients used to manipulate people. We are being manipulated as inside our individual brain. I think that's scary. That's why it's scaring
Yeah,
us a
and
lot.
we think we are not, because we are all and
I
posting
know I
things
am.
and posting. Yes, I know. I know. But I think world thinks we are independent because we are creating content, we are posting our opinion, but it's not.
Yeah. I think my call to action will be this one. The first step is to realize that each one of us are being manipulated independently of who we are. Like we all are. So a lot of people are still saying that I talk to, they still saying, oh, I'm not living a bubble, I'm not, I don't read this, I don't care about what's happening, but we are, and it doesn't matter what. So I think the call to action to each of us right now is first realize we are, and then we go from there.
Excellent. Caroline?
Oh, so there are many ways to kill people. So the data, it's the one. So understand it. It's really important for all of us. And technology, it's a weapon too. And understand it. Understand uh, the social form in the technology. It's a form to try reboot the world. So I understand it's important understand the form call to farm the data. It's passed to people. Make monitor. It's either people to have contact to data forms, to transformation, to extract, to understand how to make with this data. So it's a form to take the power for us, for the military, the trans people, the gay people, the lesbian people, the people of color, understand the power of data and make it a weapon uh, against the injustices. So it's it.
Excellent. Really, really great. Lynn?
Yep. Women learn math. Women learn math. Women come to machine learning. I was told when I was a girl, girls don't do math, and I listened to it. And it took me a very long time to learn math. I had a whole nother career before I came to programming. It was an okay career, but programming is way better. I learned calculus when I was 51 years old from Khan Academy so that I could do machine learning. I am now doing genomics. I'm 58. So don't tell me you're too old, you're too women, you're too female, you're too something. That's bullshit. If we want the power is in math and machine learning. So I would like to not be the only woman in the room. So come on in. Come on in the room. It's a good room.
I love
love
it.
you.
I love it. It's like, come, and reboot the world.
Yes. Excellent.
Excellent. Yes, I
Oh,
think
Ciranda,
yes,
I'm
please,
sorry.
Paula.
I would like to thank you very much for this opportunity. I think I talk on behalf of all of us. Um, and I would ask you to say the final words for everybody.
Oh, I just have to say thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for your words and your thoughts to share your thoughts here. And I'm so proud to be here with you. And I think the last call is realize that we are manipulated. Call the women, yet to come with us, and then reboot the world. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the last word. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
I hope we have to continue this conversation, like 5 hours conversation.
Yes, I think so too. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
sure. Just
all. Thank
because we
you.
have it, you have this
Yeah,
time available, right?
thank you
Yeah.
all, and thank you, Campus Party. She's like so proud uh, that we have this opportunity to be here now.
Yes.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye
Thank
Thank you,
bye.
ladies.
you.